Welcome to the Essentially You podcast. Maria and Kristin, honey, how are you girls doing today?
We're doing awesome.
I was just telling you guys, you girls, how amazing your Instagram account is, Wise and Well, how you are dropping truth bomb after truth bomb about us navigating perimenopause and menopause and beyond. And what we're talking about today is the truth. I'm talking, and this is the truth bombs that I'm talking about inside your Instagram account. If you're not following them, go follow them. But the truth about declining hormones and how they impact your weight, mood, and sleep. Everyone listening right now is like perking their ears up because that's everyone's concern. How are you guys doing today?
Doing great.
Super excited to talk about this. It's like our passion.
It is your passion. And talk to me about how this became your passion. How is this is the conversation you're having every day. You're serving women at a massive capacity. What was the impetus? What was the defining moment for each of you to decide to do this work?
I was about 42 years old and I felt some pretty significant shifts in my body. And I would say I was always, fairly to moderately health conscious and health aware. But like so many women that could claim that's them, I didn't really fully understand what was going on in my body. But I knew that I didn't want to see the physician on the corner in town, great guy, affable, but really just writes prescriptions. So I knew that already. And so I trekked into Manhattan. I saw a multi-published, kind of well-known medical doctor who runs a holistic center. And I was like, help me out. At that point, I wasn't sleeping and I wasn't feeling well. I was feeling off. I was gaining weight. My mood sucked. And the doctor's visit it revealed a lot to me. It was very informational. There wasn't a lot of support. There was a lot of, well, take these bioidentical hormones, which, as you know, we're not categorically against by any means. But again, remember, I was 42. So probably just at the outset of perimenopause and just at the beginning of it. And it was like, well, let's put you at an awesome DEXA scan that measured everything. And it was like, well, let's put you on a bisphosphonate drug. And then here, just take this Klonopin when you can't sleep. I ended up getting hooked on it, had to kind of wean myself off that. And it was like, all right, this was helpful, but it wasn't that helpful. And I knew that there was better out there. And that's when I just pursued a second career. And I was like, okay, I'm going back to school on women's hormones, perimenopause and menopause specifically.
Love that story so much because that is so profound that you go through it and you're like, really? This is what you've got from me? We can do better and we got to do better. Kristin, honey, how about you?
Yeah, so mine's not super different in terms of the time frame. I think Maria and I kind of represent a lot of ladies in that early 40s, things start to shift, the goalposts change, and you start to wonder what's going on. And I was stuck outside of Boston. I had great access to phenomenal medical care. Unfortunately, it was very conventionally minded. And I had a wonderful female primary care doc, and I went to her and I said, just don't feel right. Something's off. And in my mind, I'm thinking of like, do I have Lyme's disease? Because I was like achy joints and I was fatigued and I didn't have as much exercise tolerance and different things. And then the weight started to change. And so I ended up going back to her so frequently that she finally stopped me and said, hey, you've been here 4 times in 6 months. What's going on? You're normal. Everything's normal. And I remember reading somewhere, somebody saying, check your hormones. Well, of course, that was a little bit of incomplete advice because it probably would have been more relevant had I checked them at a certain time in my cycle, but I didn't know that then. It was sort of put the Mirena in, this will get you through all these changes. You're fine, nothing's wrong. And I literally, I saw my marriage start to suffer, my sex life started to suffer, my weight started to change, my self-image started to change, my sleep was completely trashed. And my mom had a complete hysterectomy when I was born and she was 32. So I had no reference for, what is menopause? When did it happen? When should it happen in my genetics? And so I went flying blind into my mid 40s. And it wasn't until, the hair changed, like everything, I felt like I was losing myself and I was putting all this work into myself and it was never working. So I started just reading and then started to think, okay, there's something more here that I'm not being told. I too decided to go back to school. And then when I was working with other women, I'm realizing I'm not alone. All of these women of my age group are starting to feel this way. And then really just shifted from, instead of general kind of nutrition work with women, to focusing specifically on midlife. And it's profound, the changes that we can make. We have so many levers at our disposal before we want medical intervention. There's no reason that women have to suffer for these 10, 12 years that they do. And that, kind of brought me and Maria together, and we both have a pretty blunt approach to things. And we're just, maybe because we've got this residual anger from kind of having been not
put through the ringer.
Yeah, adequately helped. And we were like, this is crap, and we're going to change this. And so we kind of are loud and proud, so to speak, when it comes to telling midlife women that it's not in your head. There is a huge shift. Let's learn about it. And then let's figure out what your options are. And so that's kind of what we bring, to our clients and women.
You're absolutely right. Like we deserve better. None of us need to just go to the ringer. But yes, perimenopause and menopause are inevitable. We're going to go through it, and the changes are going to happen. The hormones are going to decline. The pivots are going to, shift, and we've got to be able to pivot with our bodies. And I think that's the big message that I see with you both is these changes are happening. Like, own it. And now let's pivot with it. And I truly believe, and I think you believe this as well, is that when women are given the information, they will make those changes.
I mean, think about it. When we're at this age of our lives, most of us, we've been caregivers in one way or another, whether it's to spouse, kids, careers, whatever. We're pretty damn good advocates for everybody else in our life. But when we don't have the information that we need to kind of take care of our own health, we just sort of suffer in silence. And so we want to say to these women, like, hey, not only is there stuff you need to learn, this can be your best part of your life. You're kind of offloading a lot of those things. Those people aren't as dependent upon you. And like, let's go and thrive and soar and have a blast and travel the world and, have great sex and all these good things. And to tell a woman that that's possible and totally within her reach is the best message. I mean, Maria and I love telling women, like, no, we're going to shift this and you're going to wait and see. And, it's a proof of concept. Our clients come back to us and they're like, why did nobody tell me? So.
Well, the mindset is that first step, but we know that there's got to be work on the back end as well. So let's dive really quickly into the hormone changes, because little do we know, like, no one told us about our period. No one told us about puberty. Most women don't have body literacy. They don't necessarily know how to track their cycle, although that is shifting. And goodness knows, I feel like everyone decided to not pay attention in class when we went over perimenopause and menopause in school, and not women, I'm talking about practitioners.
Yeah.
Like they checked out, they went and listened to a podcast or something. So, because most OBGYNs and primary doctors have no idea what the difference is between perimenopause and menopause. And so no doubt women, when they're in even the perimenopause spectrum, they're like, am I in menopause? And I'm like, no, girl, you ain't even there yet. You haven't gotten to the top of the cliff or the top of the mountain. So talk to me about what is going on with us in this perimenopause spectrum as we're getting to the top of the mountain.
Well, Kristin and I like to say that perimenopause is a default state of hormone imbalance. There's kind of no escaping it. Doesn't mean that you can't do things, and it doesn't mean that you can bring yourself, that you can't bring yourself into eventual hormone balance. But, hormone balance, like to try to say aim for hormone balance at 43, 44, 45, 46, when, your progesterone is likely declining. Your
naturally declining.
Totally natural change, nothing wrong with you, how the body works. And your estrogen is high, low, medium, low, high. Like, there's no balancing that. It's almost like a fool's errand to think you're going to be balanced in perimenopause. But again, doesn't mean that we just completely ignore that. We absolutely do things that support our health, but we don't chase this elusive balance in perimenopause. So shifting hormones, so those are the sex hormones. Testosterone for a lot of women doesn't fall right away. Some women maybe testosterone sufficient into their early 60s, not all women. This is why we test. But we know that progesterone has, kind of gone south. Estrogen is fluctuating, goes south eventually. Adrenal hormones, DHEA, vitality hormone, that's going south. That probably started going south, sometime in your 20s.
In your 20s. Yeah. In your 30s. Because let's be honest, 30 to 35, there's a shift.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? 35 to 42, there's another shift.
Yeah.
You know,
and we don't do ourselves favors with our foot on the gas.
No, and that's all we know to do sometimes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say it's just amazing. And I'm not saying this because this was my shift at about 42, 43, but I've spoken to so many women that there's just something in that transition from 42 to 43 that just, it's another shift. So I don't know if it's like that, you know, the progesterone has already fallen, but now the estrogen has fallen. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but there's definitely a shift. So we can just see like 40s. I don't even say to women anymore, like, I don't necessarily talk about symptoms of perimenopause. You know, if you're in your 40s, you're likely in perimenopause.
And not to say that there aren't some women who are super, super, super dialed, and they dialed it in their 20s and they dialed it in their 30s. And now they're kind of like hop skipping through a big chunk of their 40s without noticing anything. That's very rare.
But that's what you just said. They're still in perimenopause. They just don't have as loud of an experience.
Absolutely. I'll tell you, my Mack truck moment was 35. Yeah. Almost 36. Like, I was like, what just happened to me? Like, and we were seeing these symptoms earlier in our mid to late 30s, where I was like, oh no, this is a shift. My progesterone had tanked, and it was a lot of lifestyle. I drove it right into the ground, and I had to do a massive cleanup. I mean, I'm postpartum and perimenopause right now. I'm in it. You know, I'm going to be 42 in 6 months or 5 months, whatever it is. But I felt like I had the proverbial Mack truck moment, like 36, 37. It was a rough go around. And for some women, that's 43. Some women it's 38. Some women, you know, it's all perimenopause. Just maybe the Mack truck doesn't come till 48, 47.
And some of our clients, it doesn't come at all. You know, they'll kind of hit menopause, which Maria, you know, will go next into kind of really explaining what menopause is, because there's huge confusion over that. But it's, you know, we talk about, this is why, ladies, all of these decisions that we make, whether you're 20, 30, or 40, add up. They add up to either a really loud experience or a really quiet experience.
Mm-hmm. Mm. I was interviewing a friend of mine yesterday, and she's 52, and you may know her, but I won't say who it is. And she was like, you know, I'm so happy we're having this conversation. I think menopause is coming. And I was like, well, what are the symptoms? And she's like, you know, my cycle's shifting a little. And I was like, girl, please. I was just so happy for her. I was like, don't tell nobody, you know, find you on the podcast. And I was like, no, those are not symptoms, honey. That is what happens. Your ovaries are bowing out. And if that's all you go through to get to menopause, you know what? Celebrate it.
Yeah.
Celebrate it from the rooftops, because those are not symptoms at all.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about menopause, because there is so much confusion about that, about what it is, you know, the defining moment, and then the post-menopause, and there's just all of it. It's just, everyone has a different idea of what it is.
Yeah, so many women say I'm menopausal, or they go to the doctor and they get like a high follicle stimulating hormone test reading, and you know, they get that one test, right?
The one test
visit, one, you know, like once a year.
And who even knows it's on the right day to begin with, you know?
Right. And so it's high when the day that they test, and the doctor like says they're menopausal, or women like, I'm going through menopause. So technically menopause is one day. It's like that day that you finally realize you haven't menstruated for 12 months. And anything after that is post-menopausal.
So that's the defining moment. And then the rest of your amazing life gets to unfold.
Which, by the way, is now almost a third of our life.
It could be half, depending on, So, I was fully menopausal at 47. And, you know, if I live to my 90s, I will have lived half of my life, you know, postmenopausally.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm so glad for the definition. And I know so many women feel like a lot of what we thought were menopausal symptoms, and not to say that can't spill over into postmenopause, but that a lot of those symptoms that we think are menopausal symptoms are really perimenopausal symptoms. It's the eye of the storm, really. If indeed lifestyle stresses, the modern American life that we live, if you're in that and haven't made pivots or changes, you're definitely going to feel the brunt of what is considered menopausal symptoms in your late 40s into early 50s, depending on where you land on that spectrum. And that's really the perimenopause experience that so many women are confusing. It's no wonder why so many women are like, is this menopause? And I'm like, no, girl, you're almost there, but you're not on the other side of it just yet. And it could continue to spill over into that other side.
Yeah.
All right. Things are changing. We can't change that. Hormones are declining. We can't change that. We do know that other hormones are involved, insulin, thyroid, cortisol. We can make some improvements there. We can make some shifts there. I want to talk about the wisdom of what we can do. This is not what you're ever going to hear in your doctor's office. This is not what you're going to hear from your OBGYN. This is the real recommendations, the real wisdom of pivoting with our body. Yeah. We got to pivot with our body. Talk to me about what is foundational here when, again, estrogen and progesterone are dropping. We know that's true. How can we buffer these changes out?
Yeah, I mean, I think the number one thing, and this is a hard pill for ladies to swallow, it comes down to your diet and your metabolic health. Mm-hmm. And it's difficult to imagine because a lot of women, thanks to social media or no thanks to social media, there is much more awareness about getting away from the standard American diet. Without a doubt, most women listening to this podcast are very learned about, not having Triscuits for breakfast and, Kentucky Fried Chicken for dinner or something. So that's not even what we're talking about. What we're talking about is that these shifting hormones that you just referenced are shifting how what you eat today is going to be handled by your body differently than having eaten the exact same thing 2 years ago. And that's where it's a difficult kind of mind shift for women because they start chasing this elusive image of themselves, whether it existed before or they want it to happen now. And they're using a rule book that doesn't apply anymore. And so getting women to understand tough love, you have to change to change. Mm-hmm. I don't care how good you've been doing it. I don't care that you've been eating clean paleo and, plant-based or whatever it is. You need to understand that this position of perimenopause is so unique that your nutrition needs to adapt to it. And to that end, it's a tough one to sell is low carb. Now, people, I get it. They're resisting low carb. There's a lot of misinformation about, but you need carb for your thyroid or you need, carb this, or they think low carb means keto. All these kind of noisy things have been conflated and made people very confused. And we get that. But truly, we try and teach women that as your estrogen declines, your carb sensitivity declines as well. Mm-hmm. And so this isn't about low carb to chase some number on a scale. This is about low carb to actually honor
or anything like that.
Honor your metabolism. In addition, as your estrogen and testosterone start to decline, your bones and your muscles start to be affected. So now how do we build muscle? And this is something that a lot of women, it's foreign to them, right? Because they've been doing maybe Peloton, Orange Theory Fitness, Pilates, wonderful things for a certain period of time in your life. But what you need right now is to start working on that muscle. And guess what? You're losing that race before you even enter it. So how do we build muscle? We build muscle by eating protein because that provides us with the amino acids. Animal protein, ladies, hate to break it to you, but you need those specific amino acids in order to build muscle that you work by strength training. So here's two new things for women: heavy animal protein and strength training. Okay, that's a big shift in and of itself. So Maria and I try and, work with these women to say, we cut the carbs, not out of some punitive deprivation sort of mindset, but because it honors the fact that your lower estrogen is going to make those carbs turn into fat for you. We have to increase animal protein, meaning no chia seed smoothies in the morning, ladies. We need to eat our eggs and our, turkey or bacon or whatever it is, because we need to provide our body with what it needs to maintain that muscle mass. Why do we need to do that? Not to be bikini ready. That's great. I mean, Marie and I would love to be bikini ready. It's more about protecting your long-term health, right? It's save off sarcopenia. So it's those sorts of things, it's multifactorial. It gets very noisy and confusing. It starts to frustrate women, and we get that, but we try and keep it really simple. You eat a whole foods, you drop your carbs, you increase your animal protein, and you start to balance your blood sugar. If you can do that, just that, all those other hormones that you just talked about, thyroid, cortisol, our adrenal function in and of itself, they start to get less loud, right? All those symptoms start to become less loud. So for our standpoint, diet and metabolic health is the number one place that midlife women need to start. And then we have obviously other health foundations that Maria and I are pretty adamant need to be dialed in as well.
I want to dive in a little bit into this, and I want to get into those as well. I want to speak into the need for building up that muscle. A lot of women do not realize that we begin to lose muscle mass even into our late 30s, definitely into our early 40s. And it's a percentage, pretty much like a serious percentage every decade that we've got to take into account. Also, another fact that a lot of women don't get is that we're not going to bulk. We don't have enough testosterone or androgens to do that.
You'd be lucky if you could bulk 40
right.
on, right?
I am on biceps, 20 pounds on biceps right now. There's no cuts on these little arms yet. And that's what 20-pound weight.
I'll do one better for you. I eat over 100 grams of protein every day. I pick up very heavy weights. I use testosterone. I still can't bulk.
Yeah. Exactly. I just wanted to get that disclaimer to be I just want to make that really clear to women. Like, we don't have a choice. These are non-negotiables.
Yeah. Having them understand that when we, what's our biggest fear as a woman, right? It's to be not independent. It's to be frail, and it's to be broken, right? We don't want to be that kind of castaway on the couch at 75 that everyone's kind of orbiting around at Easter dinner, right?
We don't want to not be productive.
Correct. And so when women start to hear that frailty that we're seeing at 70, 75, 80 started at 35 and 40, that starts to become an imperative for them, right? Is if you don't want to be that lady on the couch, what you do today matters more than what she's doing at 75. And, getting that piece of it, because, your bones remodel and your muscles grow when they're put under stress. And so how do we do that? We strength train. Oh, that's great. You could strength train all you want, but if you're not providing then the cofactors for muscle building, which is the animal protein, you're not going to see it. So combining that piece and just telling women it's not your 30-year-old workout and it's not your 30-year-old diet, giving them that sort of almost a permission to shift things up in a quest to avoid that frailty at 75, that's where it starts to make a difference.
I agree. Well, and also your 30-year-old workout plan ain't your 20-year-old workout plan, And so I think women are used to pivoting as long as we know we got to. And I think that's why I'm so happy to have this conversation, and we all know we can feel, that's the complaint, is that what I used to do isn't working for me anymore. And we're like, yeah, because it won't work for you anymore. And I don't think that these pivots are that, for me, at least, they're not that challenging. These changes can be, we can take small steps in this direction.
Totally.
We can start, working on the heavier weights and gradually increasing those. We can increase a little bit more protein in every single meal till we get to that place. And then we can look at whatever pieces, like if there's inflammatory foods that we've got to reduce the inflammation.
Alcohol.
Yeah. Can we?
Sorry,
right.
we're going to say it.
Let's have the conversation about the wind down, because that has been sold as the relaxation solution. And the only thing it's doing for you is it's causing insulin resistance.
And your liver needs to shuttle out all these hormones and take care of you. And, you're burdening it. And it's not just the wind down. There's also this mentality that like in our 40s, we've earned it. And I'm like, ladies, really, is this something you feel that you're rewarding yourself with? Because this actually is going to bite you in the rear end and you're not going to realize it. And it's tough, but, Maria and I, we try and be really open and honest about, how we use those things. I don't drink at all. Maria doesn't drink at all. It's been a personal arc for both of us, but wow, do we feel better not doing it? And the food piece, telling women 130 grams of protein in a day, let's say, is a goal. All they think of is that they're eating like an entire roast beef for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? And so Maria and I have started to, with our private clients, share. We're not fans of tracking because we think, we've all been kind of micromanaged with some of the messaging on eating up till this point in our lives. But we like tracking from the standpoint of just a couple of days to show, what am I getting? How do I feel when I eat a particular way? And Maria and I, just out of the heck of it, tracked both of our particular food intake and shared it with clients to say, does this look like we were eating volumes of, animals? No, it was very normal quantity of food, enjoyable food. And look, we both met our protein targets. And so just getting women to kind of step back and like clear their brain out of fears and misconceptions, and then, just dig in and do the change. Like you said, it's accessible. It's not that hard. It's just taking the steps.
It's taking the steps and knowing. It's like, okay, here is the landscape that we're working with. Here are the inevitable changes that are happen. Thank goodness there's ways in which that we can pivot around this. Yeah, we can change with our body. You're absolutely right. We can dial in because I think muscle is the organ of longevity. And if we've got to dial that not only for metabolic rate, mitochondrial function, all of it, it's all tied together, and it can support, helping to balance out a lot of our hormones. But one of the things I always tell women, and I'd love to connect with you about this as well, because this is a time in our life where all these things are changing and we have the biggest responsibilities. And so I always say, you can't green smoothie, you can't steak salad your way out of chronic stress. That, yes, you can take the supplements and the adaptogens and you can do the exercise, but you could still, your brain could still be in the proverbial, there's a tiger behind me 24/7, and that's definitely causing its own issues. What are some of the approaches that you take with a lot of your ladies in this, that they're taking care of parents, they've got kids, 33 million women are out of the workforce right now because of the pandemic, like a lot of stuff is hitting the fan for us as women. What are some things that you have found, both of you being amazing career women, entrepreneurs, moms, partners, all of it, potentially grandmas soon, what is, I'm not going to say, what does that look like? How do you walk women through this too? Because I bet that that's a lot of what can get in their way.
So summer stress is absolutely very real. And I also want to say that stress can also be just a gut infection. So stress can be physiological in the body, and it could be, just the life circumstance we find ourselves in. And Kristin may have a better kind of offering for this than I do, and so this is not to minimize people with serious stress, like taking care of ill parents, absolutely. But I also really, truly have come to realize that the stress is how we see and how we frame things. And again, that's not to downplay the fact that some people do have taking care of a sick child or what have you. I get that. My heart goes out to that. But, if we kind of frame the everyday stress, like, the work, the relationships, the traffic, I guess one of the questions I was able to ask myself and come to the realization of years ago when I was a mom with 4 small children is, what's the worst that's going to happen if I don't do this thing? Now, for me, this thing was like bringing in cookies for, a birthday in classroom birthday party, which you can't do that anymore at all because, schools, but we're talking
well, 20, that too. And every kid's got a different allergy. And so
25 years ago, you could. Yeah. Okay. And here, I just want to tell you, this is a cute little thing I came with. It was like, what's the worst that happens if I don't do this? And I was like, okay, the worst thing could be, I will bring in, I'll never forget this, a bowl of peeled clementines. Now, to the 3 of us, that sounds, healthy and fantastic. And sure, we would all do that. 25 years ago, that was like, oh my gosh, like that you would do that. Like, and people ended up loving it. I will just say that. But, what's the worst that could happen? And a lot of times, Maritza, the worst that could happen is really not that worse. And we create these stories in our head, right? So a lot of stress is, I never believe we should tell people to reduce stress. We need to reframe and mitigate stress, but we aren't going to reduce it in this lifetime.
Yeah. I've had the unfortunate part of being the caregiver for a dying parent. Unfortunately, he was 3,000 miles away. I had 1 kid off in college, 2 kids that were at pivotal places in their lives. in high school and a husband who worked in New York while we lived in Boston, and my father was in Florida. So just imagine my back and forth. I get it. It is very difficult. It is very stressful. And you've got the emotional piece, right? Let's not forget that a lot of the stress that's going on right now is very emotional. As Maria said, we don't ever tell women like you need to reduce it or you need to get rid of it. What we say to them is you need to acknowledge it, you need to embrace it, and you need to find a way to make room for it. And that may mean you're not working out, and that's okay. It may mean that you're taking naps. It may mean that you are dialing it in for dinner some days and, doing the best you can with another healthy out pickup at Whole Foods, takeout, whatever. But it's finding ways to acknowledge what's happening in your life and say, this is happening. I'm not going to run from it. I can't panic about it, and I'm not going to get rid of it. How can I help it? I think, pick your poison, some sort of practice where you become present. That could be meditation. That could be prayer. That could be gratitude journaling. That could be, a tapping routine with oils. Pick your poison, pick what works for you. It doesn't have to be what everyone does. It could be as simple as breath work. But we tell women when we have them come in and they've got these, adrenal profiles, and we read their intake forms and we recognize, they've got everything that we just described, the failing parent, the job loss, etc. Just say, okay, how are we going to deal with this? How can we acknowledge it, embrace it, and love ourselves through it? It's a difficult period of time for stress like this to happen to midlife women because we are holding ourselves to this unbelievable standard. And we think that we're taking care of everybody. And as Maria just said, what's the worst thing? If you don't take care of yourself, ladies, all bets are off for everybody else that you're taking care of. So, we try and tell women there are just routines and habits you're going to have to figure out. And that means you're probably going to have to get rid of other things, right? That means, like I said, the workout. That might mean the volunteer thing. I remember when my dad was dying, I was in the middle of working with our state legislature to shift the opening time of our high schools to a later hour because we were looking at the circadian rhythms of kids and realizing that high schoolers needed to be sleeping in, and it's the little ones who should be getting on the bus at 7:30, not a high schooler. It was a huge, important, and critical, thing that I wanted. I'd been working on this for years. Now my dad's dying. He's going into hospice, and I had to walk in and say, I need to resign from this position. I'm going to give you all the information I have. I need to go honor the stress that's in my life right now and give it attention. And I didn't feel like a failure. In fact, I felt more like a successful person because I was able to say, here's my priority. Here's what I need to do to survive. And the rest of the world's going to be fine. So getting that messaging out to women. And I think the number one thing that this can all get wrapped into is your sleep. I mean, this stress is incredibly inflammatory in the body. It adds to that physiological piece that Maria just talked about. But if we're not sleeping, all the prayer, gratitude, and essential oils in the world aren't going to do anything for you. So again, we have to have this tough love talk with women about, it's not about making 36 hours of work and 24 hours happen by staying up all night on your phone. Okay. It's going to be having very strict rules for yourself about these things and figuring it out. And if it means working with a practitioner to figure out how do you deal with the hot sweats, which might be the ones keeping you up at night, what kind of adaptogens can help you calm that brain. One of the things that women are losing right now in midlife are neurotransmitter production, right? If your gut health is off and you're eating plant-based, then you're really screwed on neurotransmitters. So that's going to increase your perception of this stress. There are ways to deal with this. So it's, like we said, it's defining it, embracing it, acknowledging it, and figuring out a way to live with it. There are tools for that. It's not pretending to the world on your Instagram account that you got this nailed. That's stressful.
Powerful. We are the common denominator of all these things.
Yeah.
We gotta acknowledge that. That is so true. I love it. Yeah. We can't tell women to just be like, well, get rid of that stress. No. How do we accept it? How do we acknowledge, how do we recognize that we're the common denominator? And yes, sleep is such a major player in that. As we're wrapping things up, I would love to hear from both of you how you decided to redefine what what it's all going to look like moving forward, but you're doing massive things in the world. Was there a moment of redefining? This isn't your mama's menopause or post-menopause, right? What it looked like for your mama is not what it looks like for you. What it looked like for my mama, my mom's mom was on Mama's Little Helper. She was on Volume. That was what we gave women back in the 40s and 50s.
Little yellow pill. There's reasons why songs are made about that.
Right. And so my mom's like, oh, hell no, I'm not doing it the way my mama did it, and it really was done to her in a lot of ways. Like, how do we do it for us? Tell me about that. Like for you yourself.
I really take in my environment, and I looked at, the average 50 to 55 to 60-year-old woman, and, lots of weight, usually, if we're being really honest, lots of weight, kind of a sallow kind of look, skin, just almost like not engaged with life. Obviously, this is not all women. You have to wonder, do they even have a sex drive? Because, sex is when when you're healthy, you kind of want to have sex. When you're not healthy, that just goes right out the window. And just the weight and just the sort of like also isolation, right? Just like not wanting to be engaged in life anymore. And I was like, I know that there's some lessening of abilities, and there is even a little bit of weight gain with age. We're not going to be the weight that we were at 30, that we are at 55. We are going to put on a little bit of weight. Metabolism, yes, it does slow down, but all of these things can be so dealt with, and so like any negative impacts can be minimized. And the more and more I read about what can I do, I was like, I want to do all that I can do. Honoring my biology, honoring the fact that, I may not be able to do everything every day, but I'm going to do as much as I can. So for me, that was the harsh reality, like Kristin said, is got to drop those carbs. It's like a non-negotiable, an absolute non-negotiable. And again, we're not pushing keto, or anything like that.
You dropped them and replaced them.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. with basically with protein and moderate amounts of fat. So that's actually not even really keto. We're kind of the reverse of that. And it was okay, like dialing in the sleep. It was like really getting serious about like, oh, this phone that I have here is fun. And yeah, it's fun to, interact on social media, but like just getting off at night, giving myself a great bedtime routine, getting help where I needed. And then for me, lastly, it was, okay, I did a deep dive, including mentorship with professionals about hormone replacement therapy. And I was like, oh, I wouldn't want to age without that. And that's on top of me doing all of the things, which we feel you need to do all of the things if you're going to even think about HRT. Like, don't put that first. That's not first in the queue by any means. But for me, that was a big thing because, again, yes, we can change our perception. We can change our experience of perimenopause and menopause. Absolutely, by what we do. But for some of us, and I'm living proof of that, even doing all the things, sometimes HRT is needed. And for me, it was. And for a lot of our clients, it is as well. So that was my aha moment. It was basically looking around at your average woman who's really not kind of self-aware as to how the changes are in her body, seeing what she looked like and decided, I don't want that. And also like, I don't want to be a burden to my family. And I want to be traveling at 60 and 70 and, God willing, 80. I've been on trips with 80-year-olds and they're totally inspirational. So
yeah. Yes. Love it. Kristin, honey.
Well, Maria and I both, so we're the only ladies in our families, okay? So for people who don't know us, we have 7 boys between us, plus 2 husbands, and then the 2 of us. And, it's easy to continue to be in this caregiving, caretaker mode, which sadly suddenly shifts into almost a martyred victim mentality when you get to your 50s and 60s. And for me, I had a mother who was very, very unhappy. We had some tragedy in our life, which partly explained it. My brother was killed, but she physically was suffering through menopause, which, like I said, started at 32. So it was a long period of life for her.
Yeah.
And I looked at that and said, not to judge her, this isn't what I want for my life. And that became what levers are in my control. I'm a complete control freak, 100% admit it, type A. I'm a recovering attorney, as I like to put it, left my practice of law, but never left my love of research. And my biggest thing was educate myself. And this is what we say to women all the time. Even if you don't want to work with us, even if you don't want to work with Dr. Maritza, read a book, figure out what's going on. And that was my aha moment of like, I'm not a victim here. I don't have to rely on a medical system that isn't that interested in making sure that my next chapter is my best, but I'm interested in that. And so figuring out the levers that I could pull were, I'm a capable, able woman. I'm going to pull those damn levers. But recognizing there's some things I'm not capable of pulling, and then having the kind of wherewithal to say, I'm going to invest in a team around me. I'm going to invest in whether it's the trainer who's going to shift me from my competitive sports to actually strength training for longevity instead of for performance, right? I'm going to, align with doctors who are going to help me monitor these health markers as I go forward in age. I'm going to, choose to replace hormones or not. For me, it was a choice to do it. But all of those things, what we're trying to tell women is, regardless of your choices, figure out what your options are. Get educated, be an advocate for yourself, and then make those choices from that confident place of, this is what I want for myself, and these are the things that I can handle. It doesn't take wealth, it takes knowledge. And that's what we keep trying to tell women is, this is a chapter that is absolutely all yours. There's nothing selfish about it. In fact, your husband's going to find you sexier when you start taking care of yourself in a way that exudes this confidence. Your kids are going to be like, damn, mom's a badass. It's a wonderful feeling when the people around you see that you have decided you matter and you put, action into that. So that was kind of my moment of just, I don't want to be tired and angry and fat and not loving myself and uncomfortable naked. How do I make sure I'm not? And I don't want to I've got APOE genes. I've got a grandmother with Alzheimer's. I had a mother with breast cancer, like all those scary things I also had too. What can I do, to address those things head on, not to run from them, not to ignore them, not to stick my fingers in my ears and pretend they're not going to happen. So that was the biggest thing, was just educate, knowledge, pull the levers you can, get a team to help you on the areas that you can't, and do not apologize for it.
Ooh, mic drop moment. Ooh, that was taking my own moment. Love. So that's so good. I'm so glad I asked that question. Let me tell you. I think we can end the conversation with that right there. Where can we plug in? How can we tap into this wisdom that you two bring to the table?
We are very active on Instagram, although I have to say I'm taking a 3-day complete
You are taking a hiatus. I saw that.
It's delicious. I'm absolutely loving it. But I would say I also love the interaction as well. And so we tend to like to say that our Instagram is very education forward. At least we try to be. And it's, if they type Wise and Well into the search bar, they'll find us.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. We also have another community that we've been building out on a platform called Mighty Networks. And we did that because Instagram limits the amount of engagement that we can have, obviously to a certain degree. Algorithms change who gets to see us, and we recognize that everyone's going to go to each person they follow and find it. So we wanted to go somewhere that wasn't Facebook, that wasn't noisy, that wasn't going to have political feeds and discussions and friends and everything else, but was just a very closed community for people who are concerned about these issues and want to get more information. And that's on a platform called Mighty Networks. So you can find that going through our Instagram profile. We have Insta links that then can link you up to how to join that. It's free.
Well, and then we'll grab the link here for the show notes as well, and we'll make sure it's in there so people can just click through there as well. So that then that's where they can really connect with you, like have that discussion and, and get to really get what you have to offer.
Yeah. And then obviously our website, we have a website we're pretty proud of that's just, trying to say who we are, what we want to do, and how we want to help women. And that's just wiseandwell.me. Probably be it, right, Maria? Yeah.
Awesome. Perfect. I will have all of those links in the show notes for this episode. Go and follow these amazing women on Instagram. Connect in. If you are loving what you're hearing, and maybe if you're like, Goodness. And you're like, but I know I need to hear more of this. Then please tune into them. I love Kristin and Maria. I think that they are the change that we need to see in the world for women moving into these beautiful stages in our lives, into this next big phase of our lives. You guys do it with such grace. So I just want to say thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.